morning, readers. It's Lori, and welcome back to my channel, Books, Ink, and Paper. I'm happy that you're here. If this is your first time, welcome, and take a look around at the other videos that I have posted. Today's video has been a real struggle. I've filmed it a couple of times. I've poked myself in the eye. I have been just really challenged. Now it looks like it's about to storm. We're expecting some horrible weather here today, so I'm going to try to get this completed and edited if I can before the storm comes. So I'm going to give it a go. Our topic today is what's on my Nook. Now, there's a little bit of a story behind how I acquired my Nook. I was a nonprofit director for a long time, and our local Barnes & Noble gave you the chance to wrap gifts for shoppers around the Christmas season in exchange for donations, which you could then use for your nonprofit. In 2011, we were fortunate enough to have been assigned Christmas Eve. My partner and I went to Barnes & Noble and started wrapping gifts, and 2011 was not the first year that Nook was released, but it was the year that the tablet was released. So it gave you a Facebook app, it gave you Twitter, it gave you email capabilities on your Nook. It really did expand beyond just an e-reader into a tablet. And of course, now we know that those are so commonplace. There's just hundreds of different kinds, but at that time, it was pretty innovative. We must have wrapped hundreds and hundreds of Nooks that day. And every time, they were easy to wrap, but every time they came to the table with Nooks, we started becoming more and more curious about what that would look like. I was a staunch oppositionist, if you will, to the Nook and to the e-reader movement, as my partner was as well. My daughter, we all said we would never, ever get an e-reader, that was the death of the physical book and the independent bookstores and box bookstores. But the more we wrapped, the more we got curious. And by the end of the day, right before we finished, my partner went in and purchased our Nook that we have today. When I first started filming this video, I thought, isn't that funny? I'm going to make a video about my Nook, and my Nook just died. But it resurrected again. So I'm not sure how that happens, but it did. So I am able to show you my ancient Nook. It is, of course, in this cover. Look how old this cover is. I've had it almost since I think this is the very and the only cover I ever bought. I don't know how much more life it has in it, but it definitely, apparently, is still going. I have a memory card, and I'm going to share with you what's on my Nook, what I've loved on my Nook, what I haven't loved so much on my Nook, and what I plan to read next on my Nook. That's kind of the direction that this will go today. So let's get started. So I looked at my Nook. I also read Nook titles on my iPad. I don't read much on my Nook anymore, but I did look on my Nook and I counted that I have 90 titles currently. Some of those titles were free. There was a time when Barnes & Noble gave you a free Friday ebook. I didn't get a lot of those, but I got a few. And the classics used to be free as well. So you could download a lot of free content when the tablets and the Nook e-readers first came out. I think that that's locked up a little tighter now than it used to be. Of those 90, I have read 22, so not too bad. I don't count the ones that I've already read in physical form, but also downloaded on ebook, because I probably will read them on ebook one day when I just happen to be without a physical copy of the book. The first book I remember purchasing on the Nook is Wicked by Gregory Maguire. This title actually has bonus content. It was $1.99, as I recall. And even though we'd already read it, we thought, well, that's a book we know we like, and we'd like to see what the bonus material looks like, so we downloaded it. So that was definitely something we were excited about, but I haven't read it on the Nook. It's still sitting here all these years later. The next book I downloaded was free, and it's Famous Coffee House Recipes that you can make at home or the office. And the author is Chef's Secret Vault. I don't think I've ever even downloaded it. Well, maybe I did then, but I certainly had to download it again today. It might be something I'll take a look at. Again, it was free. The third book I downloaded, I think, was Knit One, Purl One by Gil McNeil. Can you see that? It was either this or The Only Boy for Me, but I think it was this one. Gil McNeil writes, she's written The Beach Street Knitting Society and Yarn Club, and another book in that knitting series, I think. These are just so cute and sweet and entertaining, and I was a fan of hers from the Beach Street Knitting and Yarn Club, which I got clearly remember at Books A Million. Why I remember these things, I don't know, but I got it at Books A Million on the bargain table, and it's cute, and I like Gil McNeil. She's funny. They're great little sweet characters. They're not going to win major awards, but definitely I was excited because she had a new one out. So it was either that one or The Only Boy for Me. One of the two by Gil McNeil was the third title I remember downloading. After that, it's anybody's guess what I purchased next. So of the 22 titles that I've read, I can tell you I read Firefly Lane by Kristen Hanna, which was my first Kristen Hanna read ever. I enjoyed Firefly Lane a lot. I've read a couple of Diana Gabaldon's novellas. I have read Adriana Trigiani, The Shoemaker's Wife. That was good. I read Orphan Train by Christina Baker Klein. I've read a couple of Diane Mott Davidson's are On My Nook, and I know I read at least one of them, but I probably read both of them. I reread The Exorcist on My Nook. I did a little blurb about my relationship with the book The Exorcist in the video 10 Strange Bookish Facts About Me. But I did download The Exorcist on this device and did reread it at some point. I also downloaded Harvest Home by Thomas Tryon, which was another horror kind of read from my younger days, but I haven't reread that yet. Last year, I put a bunch of ebooks into my TBR jar with the notion that I was going to read more of them. I also have a Kindle. I have a few on iBooks. And so I thought it would be a good idea for me to create a TBR jar of these ebooks and actually start to make a dent in them. So last year I pulled a couple that happened to be on this device. One was What the Dead Know by Laura Lippman. It was my first Laura Lippman novel, and I enjoyed it tremendously. I also read The Last Anniversary by Leanne Moriarty. It was one of hers that I had downloaded but never read. I liked it too. I think that one didn't get as high ratings as some of her most recent novels, but I enjoyed The Last Anniversary quite a lot. I think I might have given it 5 stars. I read The Wednesday Sisters and The Wednesday Daughters on this device by Meg Waite Clayton. The Wednesday Sisters is one of my favorites of hers. And the sequel, The Wednesday Daughters, was also good. I didn't like it as much, but it was definitely a satisfying read. And I have read The Wednesday Sisters more than once on this device. I've also read some nonfiction titles. I have a couple by Sonia Choquette, The Power of Spirit and Diary of a Psychic. Both good. I read a book by Louise Hay and Cheryl Richardson, who is a coach that I'm familiar with, and I think it's something like The Power of How to Create an Extraordinary Life, something like that. I read it. Now, here are a couple of the books that I've read as I perused my library that I really did remember not liking. One of them is The Unbecoming of Mara Dyer. At the time I downloaded it, it was also on sale, and there's a lot of buzz about it at that time, about how good it was. People really enjoyed it. There was also, this is when I first came onto watching BookTube, there were also a few people that really didn't like it, but it had a pretty high rating on Goodreads, so I downloaded it. I didn't really care for it. It's a paranormal YA, also has a romance aspect to it about a teenager who has a difficult experience, and I think one of her friends dies in some sort of tragic accident, and she can't really remember what happened. She has some abilities that are clairvoyance or something. There was something going on. This is how little I remember about it, but I just did not enjoy it. I gave it 2 stars. Another book I read on my Nook that I didn't care for was actually didn't finish it, was The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo. Now, I know she's had a resurgence in popularity lately because Netflix made a series out of this book, but I did read about half of it maybe. I found it pretty repetitive. There was a lot of redundancy in my mind. I just didn't, we purged our clothing and shoes and jewelry, which I think is the first category. And we just weren't feeling it. We purged pretty well on our own. So we didn't really see that was a lot of help. And I can't ever imagine purging down to 30 or so books, nor can I imagine ever organizing my library by color. So we parted company when I got to books, pretty much. So some of the books I'd like to read next are really kind of the ones that are calling me the most when I look at this library. One of them I started back in August, and that is Justin Cronin, The Passage. I started it on a flight to Hawaii because I knew it was a long flight and a long layover, and it's a pretty big book. So I really liked it. I really was getting into it. And then I just got home and got back to work and didn't pick it back up again. It's now an adaptation into miniseries, but the premise of this plot is that it's a somewhat of a virus or some experiment or something gone wrong, and there's some FBI agents looking for people who are missing, and it's very complex, and I don't want to spoil too much. If you haven't ever heard of The Passage, you might want to take a look if you're into sort of sci-fi-ish thrillers / conspiracy theories it's a trilogy, so I don't know how much of it wraps up in this first one, but I do want to finish it. It's long and maybe a little more detailed than it needs to be, but it gets really great reviews as well, and I'm intrigued enough to get back into it when I get a minute. In fact, it's one of my top 9 to read in 2019, so it's definitely been on my list since the end of last year when I was setting my goals. Another of the titles that's kind of calling to me is The Bookseller by Cynthia Swanson. I downloaded this a good while ago as well, so it's an older title. The plot of this book in the synopsis says that it's about a bookseller who has kind of an ordinary life, but she begins dreaming about a woman who has a little less ordinary life. She has some romance, I think, some adventure, some things happening, and she continues to dream about this woman. And I'm not sure how, but somehow her waking life and her dreaming life start to intersect. I am intrigued by it. I like books about booksellers and bookshops, and it seems like a bit of a mystery or a thriller, or I don't know, maybe not, but I'm going to take a look at it. Another book I'd like to take a look at this year is a Nora Roberts book. It's book 2 in a trilogy. Can you see that? Shadow Spell is book 2 in the Cousins O'Dwyer trilogy. I read book 1 some time ago. I may find that I need to reread book 1, but in order to start with book 2, but maybe not. It's a paranormal romance trilogy. She has done a couple of those, and those are my favorites. Nora Roberts is not going to win any awards either. I've talked about her, I think, in another book. I read them when I'm in a reading slump typically, or I read them just because I want something kind of light and I don't have to think about, and it's pretty quick to get through it. but they're always, the formula is there's 3 women and 3 men in the trilogy, and one couple gets together in each book, and there's something that's, you know, some dark force that's at work, whether it's paranormal or not. Sometimes the dark force is jealousy or someone else getting in the way of their relationship, but they're neat, they're fun, they're easy to read, they're light. I don't know why they appeal to me at times, but I do have Shadow Spell. And the third one, the first one in this series is actually called Blood Magic. The second one is called Shadow Spell. And then let me see what the third one is called. Dark Witch is book number 3, Dark Witch. So if I like Shadow Spell, I may try to just go ahead and press on to Dark Witch so that I can kind of check that off my list and not wait so long in between book 1 and book 2, or book 3 and book 2 and book 3. See, my whole day is just weird. I could edit all this out, but another book that's been calling me and has been on my Nook for a while, it's an older title, is called Finn and Lady by Cathleen Schine, Schine. I remember it's about a woman who either fosters or adopts a child. And the premise of it at that time was just really cute. And I was intrigued by it, but I just never took the time to read it. So I think I would like to read those 3 to 5 books off of my list this year, and maybe not right away, but just kind of sprinkle them in the months on my TBR. So I'm going to kind of make an intentional effort to get to these and to make time for them. I'm traveling a bit this year. I have a couple of trips planned with family and maybe a couple of work trips as well, it looks like. So when I travel, it is really easier for me, especially if I travel by plane. It's easier for me to take an e-reader than it is to take a lot of physical books, because they just get to be kind of bulky and hard to carry. It is one of the things that convinced me at the time to actually give the e-reader a try, because I was at that time traveling quite a bit, and I was finding myself lugging a lot of books along the trip with me. So this still remains kind of my favorite way to read when I'm on a plane, or when I'm on a train, or, you know, when I'm away on a vacation away from home, because I don't have to just bring one book. And what if I don't like that one book? And what if I don't want to finish that one book? Then I have a whole list of other books to take a look at. Yeah, always need a lot of books in my life. I hope that you enjoyed this video and this little look at my Nook library. I don't know that I'll replace my Nook if it does end up taking its last official breath, but I have enjoyed it, and it will always have that special connection to me because it was my first e-reader ever. Let me know what's on your e-reader library, whether it's a Nook or Kindle or iBooks. Let me know if you read any of these titles, if you like them, didn't like them, if they interest you. I would really love to know what some of your favorites are, whether you read ebooks or don't, and why or why not. And as always, I wish you a very, very happy reading day. Bye-bye.